Welcome to Beta Masters. Just a quick warning that our sense of humor, our language, and our content may not be appropriate for certain audiences, so listener discretion is advised. Parental advisory, we have explicit personalities. If you are under 18 and your parents don't know that you're listening to this, they'll find out because we're going to use really big words and you're going to have to ask them. So, kids, this is where you turn it off.
Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of the MetaMasters podcast. My name is Aaron Scott. I'm here with my co-hosts Mike Likes and Missy Brown. And today we're going to be bringing you a brand new podcast. This cast is going to be around talking about mostly modern and standard metas, but we will also delve into a little bit of Legacy, a little bit of Commander, some limited later on. But we are here basically to talk about what each format's meta is looking like, what decks are good, what decks can beat the good decks, throw in some new spicy deck techs every now and again, and just hopefully help you understand the meta of this great game, Magic the Gathering, better. So, like I said, my name is Aaron Scott. I've been playing Magic for about 2 years now. It's a little less than other people, but I've just absorbed a lot of time or a lot of information during that time, so I feel more confident talking about it. I play Modern, a little bit of Standard, haven't played it in a while, a little bit of Limited, but Modern's definitely more my forte, followed by EDH. I consider myself more of a mid-range player. I like playing Merfolk and Mardu Pyromancer in Modern, and I consider myself, I'm not quite a grinder yet. I'm learning to be a judge, so I'm much more rules-oriented, but yeah, so Missy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Missy Brown. I live in North Central Texas. I'm the tournament organizer at my local game store, and I am also a judge candidate. So I might also be a rules nerd. You may love us or hate us for that before it's all over. I am like most Magic players. I was introduced to the game when I was a teenager. For me, that was in the mid-90s. And then I quit, went to college and did the grow up thing and fell back into it in 2014 around cons. Proceeded to be the worst Magic player in the store that I started organized play in. And I've gotten slightly better, I like to think, since then. My preferred formats are always limited formats, sealed over draft. And then I do enjoy Standard, but I'm really excited that I have recently been delving into Modern. I really love the Modern community and the power of the cards. And I have no experience in Legacy because I am broke. But someday I'll get there. Everybody's got to have goals, right? If it all came easy, then like we wouldn't want to play this game. That's part of what sucks you into it.
Yeah.
So my play style is usually aggro and limited. I really enjoy control matchups in Standard, except for right now because I'm playing that mono red aggro deck and it's just so much fun. And then in Modern, I have been messing around with another aggro deck. But I haven't really figured out where I like to be. I had been playing like a homebrewed smallpox Gideon tribal deck that was actually not terrible. So I think I'll probably end up in control in Modern as well at some point. In addition to just playing the game, I also really appreciate the lore and the art. So I will continue to be broke until I die.
That Gideon deck sounds really cute. So, Mike, why don't you give us a little bit of rundown of yourself?
All right, my name is Mike Likes. I'm from Central Wisconsin currently. I've been playing since around the time of Lorwyn, so quite a little while. I've not been very good until fairly recently, and now I'm one of the better players at the shop that I play in. I enjoy teaching new players how to play, and I'm a pretty big aggro player myself. Probably one of my favorite colors in Magic, and as long as I'm turning creatures sideways, I'm happy.
Sounds perfect. So we've got a lot of people that like turning cardboard sideways. I forgot to mention I'm from the central Pennsylvania area. I got a lot of friends that play in the big New York and PA, New Jersey Magic scenes. But yeah, so this show is actually sponsored by MTG Deck Techs. They're a article and obviously deck tech site. You can find them at mtgdecktechs.com. And basically they post articles that they're not by any big name pros or anything like that yet. We're not like an SCG or a Channel Fireball or anything like that. But we allow people from the community to kind of dip their toe in the water of sharing information with others and helping newer players kind of understand the game through players that used to be new players themselves. We also have some really spicy deck techs that go up occasionally. We're going to be talking about a really, really good one that they came up with a little while ago later in this podcast. But yeah, just wanted to shout them out real quick because they're the ones giving us the opportunity to do this. So first things first, Masters 25 just came out. Have either of you cracked any packs yet? I cracked 6 yesterday.
I did a draft on Saturday at my local shop. Didn't do very well. Came in about mid-pack, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think the format looks really good. I haven't had a chance to draft it yet, but my packs yesterday came from 2 draft pack things from Walmart that I probably spent way too much money on, but I bought them and I pulled exactly an Azusa, and that was it. So the EV for the set looks a little wonky right now, but what about you, Missy? Did you get anything out of Masters 25 yet?
I did draft on Friday night, and I opened like a Vindicate and then 2 filter lands, but nothing really playable. And then, yeah, I feel the same way about the value, but the kicker is that everybody at the shop, the owner and the 3 employees, have opened a box and they have all pulled a Jace. So I was like, okay, I'll get a box. And I haven't opened it yet, but I'm like, if there's not a foil Jace in this box, I may quit Magic.
Yeah, well, that Jace should pay for most of the box itself. My LGS sold out of boxes very quickly because my store owner is a very nice guy and understands the value of this set is going to be less than the others, and so he was selling his boxes at $180. So he sold out quick. But yeah, it seems like an interesting set. It seems like it'd be really, really fun to play in limited. The value's just not 100% there yet, I don't think.
I ended up playing like red-green, I think, and it was a lot of fun. So I like draft sets in general. I think that it's hard because we expect a lot out of the sets because of the history of master sets and the value that was in them, to like step away from the finance side, and I'm just as guilty of that. But it's nice to put together cards that have never been drafted before and give people that new experience, like at least for the invested players.
Right, and I think that one of the things that's killing the EV of this set is that the expensive quote-unquote cards that they put in it, other than Jace the Mind Sculptor, were all cards that were expensive simply because of the fact that they'd been printed like one time. See Imperial Recruiter. Like, it got printed one time, didn't really get played much, but was like a $200 card because there was not a lot of it in existence. Now it exists, and now it's down to like $50. So it's that's one thing that I think is really killing the set. So did any of you guys have any last comments about Masters 25 before we move on?
I would agree with that statement, but I also, in the past, I don't know that it will stand this time, but prices have rebounded pretty quickly. And so if it's mostly that there was just a supply issue, once the new supply gets eaten up, the prices will rebound. So if you can get them cheap, you know, it might not be the worst idea. Just for the ensnaring bridges and the chalices.
Right. Yep. Now's the time to buy, not to sell, and it's also the time to buy every card that wasn't printed in that set, i.e. Liliana the Veil. So, Mike, did you have anything, any last comments to make before we move on to talking about the modern meta?
Nope, I'm good.
Alrighty. So, Missy, do you want to lead us off with our modern discussion?
So there have been a lot of recent changes to Modern, most notably the unbanning of Jace the Mind Sculptor and Bloodbraid Elf. And I know that everybody has had conversations about these, but we're going to cover it really quickly, specifically Jund.
Yeah, so Jund, yeah. So this deck is where Bloodbraid Elf first became busted back in the day when Modern was first kind of starting out. A lot of people have used the phrase, oh, Bloodbraid Elf died for the sins of Deathrite Shaman when it got banned the first time because they believed that it was more Deathrite Shaman was the card that was too broken and Bloodbraid Elf didn't need to be banned. My opinion, however, after seeing how Jace and Bloodbraid have both impacted the format, is that given the fact that Jund has completely resurged from being an almost, not really a dead deck, but not seeing very much play at all, to a deck that's consistently in the top 8 of tournaments is 100% on the fact that Bloodbraid Elf can cascade into Kolaghan's Command, and that is just stupid. In a good way.
The thing about Modern is that there's a real good chance you're cascading into good stuff, period.
Right. But
Cascade is great.
Yes, Cascade is an extremely good mechanic. But the funny thing is that Kolaghan's Command isn't the only thing that Bloodbraid Elf can cascade into. Bloodbraid Elf may be an elf, but it has a really funny habit of cascading into really good humans, which is why I think a lot of human decks have been starting to run Bloodbraid Elf. There was actually quite a lot of that at GP Phoenix, I think. Let me pull up Steve Locke's deck list actually from that GP. I think he was one of the Bloodbraid Elf humans decks. Let me just see this real quick. So okay, so he was not, but Steve Locke was the guy that won GP Phoenix, which just happened this past weekend, and he was running basically a stock humans list, your Aether Vials, Reflector Mages, Champions of the Parish, all that kind of stuff. But there were a couple of humans decks out there. I know I saw them on camera that were actually running Bloodbraid Elf, because there's so many. In humans, none of your cards are going to be more than 4 converted mana costs before sideboard. And so basically you can Bloodbraid Elf into your entire deck, which is really, really good. Do you guys have any comments on that?
So even when it's not in Jund,
Yes.
Bloodbraid Elf is there and being oppressive.
Correct. So let me just...
Is there so much that I feel like it doesn't even let Jace be oppressive? Like, people are just like, why would I play Jace if I can play Bloodbraid Elf?
Well, Hasty and another card. That's it's 2 for 1 over Jace, so Value Town.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, Jace and Bloodbraid Elf kind of counter... Well, Bloodbraid Elf kind of directly counters Jace, because a lot of the times when you're playing against a Jace deck, what they're going to want to be doing when they play Jace out is Brainstorm. So they're keeping the Jace loyalty at 3 going into your turn. So if they play Jace, and then you play Bloodbraid Elf, you're going to just immediately be able to kill the Jace with that Bloodbraid Elf, because it's a 3-2 with haste. So if they don't have any blockers or anything, you can just completely hose them, take away their power card, and have your own power card. So it's interesting. I think banning or unbanning Bloodbraid Elf was actually a mistake, and it wouldn't surprise me to see that get banned again before Jace does.
But it's like they unbanned it so there would be an answer to Jace, and now the answer is the problem.
Right, because there's not really many good answers for Bloodbraid Elf. It's hard to Fatal Push. It gets bolted easily, but that's not really the point. Like, Bloodbraid Elf isn't really being used as a 3-2. It's being used to cascade into better cards.
Right. But by the time you can, unless you can counter it, by the time that you have a chance to respond, it's too late. Like, the damage has been done. Game changes that fast.
Right, and I think the other thing is that it works as a card that it's almost like it does Bob's job, Bob being Dark Confidant for those who aren't into Magic lingo, better than Dark Confidant does, because there's no downside of taking damage off the card or having to worry about greatness at any cost, because you can just cascade into whatever card you're trying to cast. But I do think that, speaking of Dark Confidant, it is extremely hilarious that Dark Confidant caused the outcome of a Grand Prix finals. I don't know if you guys saw the finals for GP Phoenix at all. But yeah, basically what happened was, it was Jund versus humans. Obviously, Junduck has a Dark Confidant on board. He's at like 2 or 3 life, I think, if I recall, and he's sitting there with his Dark Confidant. He's like, okay, I'm either going to grab a card that's going to win me this game, or I'm going to lose off this Dark Confidant. And he just flips the top card, throws it on the table, and it was something I can't even remember, but it was enough CMC to just kill him. And that's how the GP was won by humans. But, so I guess we can...
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, Dark Confidant is... There's a reason why when people play the card, they use the phrase greatness at any cost, even if that cost is your own life. So I guess we can move on from this to our next little small topic here, which is something from me personally, and that is that I think that Mardu Pyromancer is still a really good deck in this format. So we haven't seen much of it since Jerry Thompson won Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan with it, but it's a new style of mid-rangey deck that I've grown to love. I think playing a Bedlam Reveler for red and then just getting 3 new cards and a 3/4 on the field is really, really, really good. And just the way that it plays, it's able to interact with a lot of decks in the format, because your hand disruption on turns 1 through like 3 is just, it rips apart aggro decks, it rips apart combo decks, it keeps control decks from doing much, because a lot of times your combo decks and control decks are going to be keeping a lot more lands, so you can use your Inquisitions and Thoughtseizes to just rip all the good cards out of their hands so that they're just stuck with their lands. And then the faster you're able to do that, the more you're able to fill up your graveyard. You Faithless Looting when you need to, you Manamorphose when you need to, and all of a sudden your graveyard's just stocked up with instants and sorceries. Here's like 3 Bedlam Revelers for 6 mana each. Do you concede yet? And so I feel like the deck performs really well against decks that can't particularly interact with what it's doing too well. I've noticed that my struggles tend to come with control matchups a little bit, because they're able to counter stuff more. They have better removal and all this, that, and the other thing. But I think right now in the meta, Mardu Pyromancer's in a pretty good spot. But I think that the day that Mardu Pyro dies or gets hurt is the day that Dredge comes back, because of the fact that when Dredge is in the format, there's just inherently more graveyard hate being played, and that's what really hits Mardu Pyro hard. Excuse me. So I think ultimately it's a great deck, and I think people should continue to play it. That's just my opinion.
So I have a funny Marty Pyromancer story. I was at the Hunter Burden Memorial Open last month, and I was playing the Blue-Red Prowess deck that Mike Reed and Rupe published on the MTG Deck Tech site. And I'd been testing it online, and I really liked it. It's a super fun deck and really engaging to play. And my second round opponent was playing Marty Pyromancer, and it was the most awful thing ever, because my deck doesn't have any counter spells. And so, like, you can sideboard in some answers to the threats, but there's just too many of them.
Yeah, that's one of...
So I lose, and I walk outside to give myself cancer. And who walks out behind me to give himself cancer but Jerry Thompson? Like, I just looked, and I was like, I just lost to your deck. But hi.
That must have.
It was so painful. Yeah, and I know the deck pretty well because that's the deck I was looking at in Modern before I saw this list, and I was like, "Ooh, that looks fun. I'd like to play that." So, but he was such a nice guy and very gracious, and very quick to let me know that it wasn't actually a deck, that it was somebody else's from Magic Online. And he just discovered it there and won with it.
Yeah.
But
That's the funny thing about Mardu Pyro, and I'm actually in a Mardu Pyro group on Facebook, is that it was really kind of born out of Magic Online. Like, it was crushing modern leagues in Magic Online for a really long time before it showed up at the Pro Tour, and so it was always just kind of there, but no one had really tried to play it in paper before Jerry Thompson did. So it's a deck that I think is going to be good in the future. I think that Dominaria is going to give it some really interesting toys to play with, and I think that it's just one of those decks that if you don't have a way to stop what it's doing, it's going to just run you over and kill you, and it'll have more answers for you than you have for it. But I think that's enough rambling for me on that. So, Missy, do you want to talk to us about one of MTG Deck Tech's first really spicy deck techs that they've done?
sure, let me pull up the list really quick, even though I pretty much have it memorized. It's a super aggro blue-red deck, and the number one question that I always get when people ask what I'm playing is, are you running Kiln Fiends? And it doesn't. And that's a debatable deck choice. But it's basically 4 Swift Spears, 4 Delver of Secrets, 4 Storm Chaser Mages, and 4... Oh, that thing that gets plus... Hold on, let me look. Elusive Spellfist. That's what they are. And then just a lot of like bolts and other pump spells. But the really fun part is the Phyrexian mana. It runs mutagenic growths and Noxious Revivals in the main board. And then there's some answers in the sideboard, like Leyline of Sanctity as well. And it's just a really fun and engaging deck to play. The biggest weakness that I found is the lack of counter spells, and then like if they counter something and you can't find creatures, like things get real messy. But I have really enjoyed playing it, and I'm looking forward to streaming it on Magic Online so people can see it and tell me how terrible I am at playing the deck. I'm sure that will happen. I'm always open to positive or constructive criticism because that's the way that I've learned to play Magic best, is by being told where I could be playing better. But yeah, everybody that I have shown the deck list to has been like, that looks really fun, and like really impressed. And I've shown it to some pretty good Magic players, like way better than I'll ever even dream of being. So that's quite the compliment to the deck. But
yeah, and I was looking at the deck when they were first coming out with it. I was initially going to do the deck tech video for it, but I had some prior obligations come up, so I'm a little familiar with it as well. And I thought it was super spicy, just because it's one of those decks that it feels like it can just get you. Like a Boggles or an Infect or something like that. Like, I feel like the deck it's most comparable to is Boggles, because it kind of does the same thing, except it uses prowess instead of stacking a whole crap ton of enchantments on stuff. And I think that it's a deck that once it gets tuned just a little bit more and maybe gets in the hands of much more experienced players, it could actually go somewhere. And I think there's a lot to it. But yeah, I think it's a... Yep,
the 2 cards that I play against that I'm always jealous of have been Serum Visions and Snapcaster Mage. So I feel like there may be some room, and I've kind of played with the Serum Visions because if you can combo them off with the Noxious Revival, it feels so good to be able to get the card back and then set up your next 2 turns with the Serum Visions after you've already hit the Noxious Revival. So.
Okay. So I think we might be having some minor technical difficulties on Mike's end, so whenever he can jump in and talk, we can do that. But I think we're just having some really interesting issues. But so I think we can move on from that. Just real quick before we wrap this up, in terms of changes to the modern meta, I don't think there's going to be a ton outside of just obviously seeing more Jason Bloodbraid. I think that those, like I said, Bloodbraid Elf is going to be much more impactful than Jace will in the long term. And I think eventually, I don't know if the format will warp in around that a ton, but with Lightning Bolt being a lot more prevalent now, because A, it kills Bloodbraid Elf, B, Jund plays Lightning Bolt and Jund's becoming more popular, I think that that'll make the format go kind of back to where it was a couple years ago, where having creatures that can survive Lightning Bolt is going to be really important. That's part of the reason why I actually put down Merfolk for a little while, because I feel like Merfolk which is the other modern deck that I play, is in a really bad spot right now because there's just so much small creature removal, with Pyro running around, with humans running around, with Jund running around. It's just it's not in the best spot right now. So I think that's one thing that's going to kind of go away, is like those really small creature-based decks. We may even start seeing a little bit more of a drawback in humans, except for the humans decks that incorporate Bloodbraid Elf into it. I think the reason that it's still winning GPs right now is because it's still a really good deck. It just does so much to interact with things and keep itself alive. And that's another reason why I think Merfolk is dying, because I think humans just does what Merfolk did better. But that's just my opinion. Did you have any final thoughts on Modern before we move on to Standard, Missy?
I am totally ready to discuss this Standard meta, because it's pretty spicy.
Yep. Mike, did you have any last thoughts before we move on? If you can hear us.
Yeah, I think I'm here again.
Yep, you're here.
I think just one thing I want to point out is that Bloodbraid Elf, I don't know if you guys already touched on this, but Bloodbraid Elf, when it was unbanned, it already had a deck to go right back into that was already good enough for Modern before. Since Jace had never been in Modern, everything has to be new with him, so it's going to take a little bit more time to find a good home where he fits in and can break the game like we all know he can. So I think with people iterating over and over again with new builds for him, he's going to become the powerhouse we all know he should be. And then Bloodbraid can sit on the shelf for a while.
And in that same vein, that makes it a really good time to be picking up your playset of Jace's, or however many you want to play with, because like the price is low right now, but as soon as he does find a home,
right, they're going to go up.
It's going to go back up. So it's a real responsible time to not be an adult with your money and buy some.
And especially considering the fact that right now is a good time to specifically buy Masters 25 versions of him, because those are probably going to be the cheaper of all the versions you can get of him. And since he just got reprinted in there, that's going to make his price go down from the like 150 that it was before Masters dropped when everyone was selling out of it. He probably settles around 70, I think. That's where Liliana ended up after she got printed in Masters 25, so I could see him sitting right around there. So I'd say buy now, but don't buy right now. I'd say within the next like month or two is probably when it's gonna plateau out a little bit, because I could see his deck being found within the next 6 months, but I think there's still time to wait out just a little bit. So yep. I think it's about time we move on to Standard. So I think Standard has grown infinitely since the bannings of the couple of energy cards that we got. And it was funny, they tried to neuter the red deck just a little bit, but they didn't really take out anything that mattered to it much. So I think that it's interesting how Mono Red seems to have kind of taken over where Teamer Energy was. And it's kind of starting to be the deck you see everywhere, but no one really seems to care that much because it's a Mono Red deck. I don't know, maybe Missy, you can fill me in a little bit on this more since you play the deck.
So the Mono Red deck should just be called Mono Red Good Stuff, because everything is just so oppressive in the deck. Like, once you get on a roll, you're just going to win. I mean, I can't even really say which decks I've had problems with, because I have not lost a match since I started playing the deck.
Yeah, I haven't played Standard a ton in the last 6 months or so. If it says anything, the last time I played Standard, Aetherworks Marvel was still in the format. And I may have been playing that deck. But Mike, do you have any comments on the Standard meta?
Rekindling Phoenix. What an amazing card. You get that Phoenix on the board, and it's a great both on offense and defense. And I think that's really the card that, for me, when I'm playing anything red, pulls the whole deck together. I can attack every turn in the air if I want to, or I can sit back and use it as a nice blocker and play defense. I have nothing bad to say about this card. It's much better than I thought it was originally going to be when I reviewed the set. And it's like the all-star for me for this set.
It's so good because in order to properly deal with it, they have to have enough mana open on, turn 4 or 5 to deal with the Rekindling Phoenix and also potentially, push or however they're going to deal with the token, because otherwise it just keeps coming back. The thing I really like about it, and it might not be as good in Dominaria because Legendary matters, is that Rekindling Phoenix isn't Legendary. So if you get 2 of them on the field, it's great. It's just, it probably feels really bad on the other side of the table, but I really enjoy doing that.
Yeah, I think it's still going to be good when Dominaria comes out because Phoenixes, if you have multiple, your opponent is just going to hate that.
And didn't Rekindling Phoenix kind of either breathe new life into or just straight up create a new standard deck in the form of red-green monsters? I don't think that was a deck before that card came out.
I think that also has a lot to thank for having Explore creatures because they help smooth out your draws, make sure that you hit your lands so that you can cast these larger threats.
Explore is such a fun mechanic. I don't know if either of you are playing Arena, but I'm like a master of Ixalan block constructed now, and the green-black Explore deck is a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, there's a reason that Jade Light Ranger is like a $10 card.
Yeah, it is that good.
Yeah, for sure. Now, one thing interesting that I want to touch on a little bit, and this is something that I kind of called right as the bannings were happening. So right before the bannings happened, it was interesting. It's interesting to note that most of the energy decks were 4-color. It wasn't really Teamer energy anymore. It was more 4-color energy because basically everybody was splashing the Scarab God at this point. I think all that banning Rogue Refiner and Attune with Aether did was just say to everyone, okay, cool, I'm just going to take all the green out of my deck and I'm just going to put black cards into it. I can still play Scarab God. Here we go. Enter Grixis Energy.
Oh, yeah.
Which I feel like kind of just does the same thing, just with black cards instead of green cards. Because it's you have your Glint Sleeve Siphoner, which is sort of like your Rogue Refiner, but it's better, obviously. It allows you to play 4 Scarab Gods since you're already in black. You're still playing Whirler Virtuoso, which, in my opinion, if they were going to ban a card, they should have banned Whirler Virtuoso, not Rogue Refiner, because Whirler is the much better card.
No, I disagree. Rogue Refiner was the card that needed to go. This Grixis Energy deck, to me, looks more like the old blue-black control decks with red thrown in for Virtuoso plus some removal.
Okay, I can agree with that, and I assume that the Rogue Refiner thing is because, obviously, enter the battlefield, hey, cool, I draw a card.
Oh.
The only reason I say Whirler is because of the fact that it gives you something to do with your energy if you don't have anything else to do, and a lot of times those Thopters can just win you the game, because there's not a ton of flyers in Standard right now. Now that Rekindling Phoenix is out, there's starting to be, some more, but I still think that those 1/1 Thopters are just so important for the deck, especially in the late game.
Virtuoso is much more balanced, though, because it only gives you enough energy for 1 Thopter, whereas Rogue Refiner just gave you energy for nothing, and you got a creature to boot.
That's fair. I would say, though, that Whirler, it's it itself only gives you enough energy for a Thopter, but by the time you're playing it, you probably have a lot more than that. I will say that I'd much rather see people feeding energy into a Whirler Virtuoso than feeding it into a Bristling Hydra, because Bristling Hydra is not a fun card to play against. It's fun to play with, but not to play against. But I think that this Grixis Energy deck, and the one that we're looking at, by the way, is Andrew Funkhauser's Grixis Energy deck from the SCG Standard Classic in Dallas.
He's a funk house.
Yes, very funky house. But I think another card that a lot of people aren't talking about really is Search for Azcanta. Like, it's a $19 card for a reason. It just got printed 3 months ago, and it's seeing play in every blue deck in Standard. It's in basically every blue deck in Modern, at least decks that are, more, at least the control decks in Modern. But it's just like, it's a card that showed up and it's just seeing play everywhere. Like, I think that's a card that's just super good right now.
I think a lot of like newer players especially overlook the fact that these flip enchantments give you that extra mana in the game when you may need it. And this card just seems like it's a controlled extreme.
Oh, it is. I normally play aggro, but this last Friday at FNM, I played the blue-black control deck. I had never played Search for Azcanta before, but I got it into play a few times, and wow. I didn't even want to flip it most of the time, because just being able to... The one card on top of my deck, just being able to look at it and decide, do I want to keep that or bin it? That's enough that most of the time I just left it as is and did not transform it.
And that's the thing is, once you do transform it, if you pull another one and have it in your hand, you can transform the one, and it's just a 2-drop. So really, after you transform it, it's just a 1-drop because you've got the blue mana from the Azcanta Sunken Ruin, and then you have all of the abilities on the backside of the card as well as that scry ability for the rest of the game.
True.
Yeah, Search for Azcanta is just a stupid card. When I was playing my Modern Monday games last night at my LGS, I played against a Grixis control deck, and whenever I was thought seizing him, I was more often than not taking his Search for Azcanta just because I know how stupid that card can be in control decks. But I think that another interesting deck is the blue-black mid-range deck that was also in the top 8 of SCG Dallas. It was piloted by Jim Still. And I think this is another really interesting take on this blue-black deck that just kind of shows up every now and again. I think the inclusion of Liliana's Death's Majesty is really interesting because we actually haven't seen a lot of this particular Planeswalker. And I think in this deck in particular, it actually works really well because you can play it in the late game. It's good in the late game, and you just get zombies out of it, which a lot of times you're going to be having your zombies off of your Scarab God anyways, because the Eternals, I think, are zombies. I could be wrong.
Yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong.
They are.
And so having that zombie synergy is just stupid good in my opinion. And in my personal opinion, any deck that runs Walking Ballista is just going to be a good deck, because Walking Ballista is just a stupid card.
Why would you only run 2 Walking Ballistas when you can run 4?
I mean, you could also look at the deck and say, why would you only run 3 Scarab Gods when you can run 4? It just comes down to priority of other cards. And Walking Ballistas, from what I can see in this deck, it's more of a, hey, if I get this, I'm going to do it. But it's not like I'm putting all of my time and effort into playing this card.
I just love Walking Ballista. And it's just kind of my pet card. I played blue-black control for a little or Grixis control when the standard format changed and rotation happened, and this was my favorite card in the deck. It's just fun. I like it better than Torrential Gearhulk. I know that's weird.
In this deck too.
What was that, Mike?
I said Gonti is pretty spicy in this deck too.
You're mind melding me, dude. That's why I was just looking at that card back when I was playing. When I played the ye old 4-color Saheeli, I hated seeing Gonti because it was just like you can steal. You get to form your opponent's the top of your opponent's library and just take their best card. Like
yeah,
I think
feels worse.
Say that again.
Nothing feels worse than having your cards taken by your opponent and used against you.
Yeah, like that's In that particular instance, it's a little bit better than what the +2 on Jace does in Modern, because not only do you get to form your opponent's library, you get to take the card, not just put it on the bottom.
Yep.
But yeah, I think something interesting to also talk about is Torrential Gearhulk, because that card, when it first came out, was kind of like, there was a point when that was a $20 card. Like, it just was so huge in these control decks metas, and I think it's still secretly just kind of been there. Like, it's interesting that it's just starting to float under the radar a little bit, but it's like, it's still there and it's still doing what it does. Like, I hate losing to a Torrential Gearhulk in standard. It's basically, it's your standard Snapcaster Mage, but better because you can just play the card without paying its mana cost.
And I think once Dominaria comes out, both Torrential Gearhulk and Noxious Gearhulk are going to get better because of Phyrexian etchings.
Yeah, which one was that? I need to look at the spoiler.
That's the saga that level 1 you put some sort of counter on an artifact, or it makes a creature into an artifact, and then level 2 is where it destroys all creatures except for artifacts.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty good. But yeah, so I think that Torrential Gearhulk is definitely a card to look out for in the future. So on the topic of Dominaria, what if you guys? I assume you guys have obviously seen the spoilers at this point, and official spoiler season starts tomorrow at the time of recording this. Probably today if you're listening to this on release day, which should be the 21st of March. But so we'll actually get to see cards that weren't in the leak that happened a couple weeks ago, and maybe even see the arts for the cards that were. I'm super excited for this set, mostly because of the fact that I started playing during Shadows over Innistrad, and so I haven't really ever experienced Dominaria before. Missy, you were playing last time that we were on actual Dominaria, weren't you?
Yeah, but I didn't know. Like, so context there. When I first started playing Magic, I grew up in the South, and a very conservative part of the South, and it was 30 minutes the closest place that you could persuade your parents to go let you buy Magic cards, if you could persuade them at all, because everybody thought that your kids were going to hell if you let them play Magic. So it was one of those things you didn't really have a lot of access to, and there wasn't the internet to learn all of this stuff. So if you weren't in a major metropolitan area where there was a scene, you just didn't know that stuff. So for me, it's exciting to go back with an appreciation of Magic as a game and how far the game has come, and all of the hard work that the story writers and the content producers at Wizards have done to make it such a great fantasy world for us. So I'm super excited to play in Dominaria.
What about you, Mike? What do you think about Dominaria?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I played way back in the day, but I mean, when that was the only world that we played on, but I knew nothing about it really. I wasn't into the lore. Now, since I got back into the game with Lorwyn and moving forward, I'm a big time lore buff. And I mean, I'm looking forward to it so much. This week, we're going to get 2 stories. Blake Rasmussen told us that today on Twitter, that 2 stories are going to be released this week, one on Thursday and one on Wednesday. So look for those. I can't wait for those.
Yeah, I didn't even see that announcement. I'm super excited for that. I got really into the story right before I went to basic training, actually. And I crushed the story from Origins on. And I started at Origins really only because of the fact that I didn't know where to start in the story. I didn't know where the actual, point of beginning in terms of the story articles was. So I just started at Origins and went from there, and I just got hooked. I loved it. And so I'm very excited to go to Dominaria because, like I said, I've only been playing for a couple years, but I understand and know a lot of the cards that exist. And just flipping through the spoiler, seeing a lot of the cards that kind of give callbacks to cards that existed. The Squee card being one. There's a card that references references somebody. I was looking at it, I can't even remember it anymore. But it's just seeing a lot of the cards that, like, they're not reprints of old cards, but they capture the essence of the old cards. I think this set is going to be super awesome, and it's a powerful set, which I think is something that we needed to spice up Standard, and will hopefully bring a lot more people back into Standard.
Here.
So I think that one of the more interesting things is these. Since we talked about them, these Saga cards, which right now the only one we have art for is Phyrexian Scriptures. First off, I think the card design, I was a little put off by it when I initially saw it, but as I keep looking at it, it just looks awesome. It's almost full art, but it's kind of not. It's like, it looks really cool in my opinion. I think that these are really awesome types of cards to do, because it's like it's an enchantment, but it's also almost not an enchantment at the same time, because it will eventually be destroyed after the third use of it. But it's just, I think that it's an interesting thing that's going to get thrown in here that could really be interesting for Standard.
Yep.
I like the card design a lot. I think it kind of emulates the Planeswalker design in that once you, except for here, when you gain a certain number of counters, it's like you've ultimated it. That's a word. Just like when you remove the large number of counters off of a Planeswalker, it ceases to exist on the battlefield. And the fact that you can, visually determine from just glancing at the card that you're supposed to do something. It's almost a visual trigger for you to remind you that it does something, for players who might forget that their enchantments are there and have triggers.
Well, come on, players never forget triggers. I don't forget triggers. Do you really forget triggers? Come on.
I never, ever at the SCG Open in Dallas forgot my rebound trigger. Ever. 3 damage. Well, actually, it's 5.
I've been playing Bedlam Reveler for 2 weeks. I've been playing Bedlam Reveler for 2 weeks, and I can say with 100...
really are the best, though. They really are.
Just realized my mic was muted. I've been playing Bedlam Reveler for the last 2 weeks, and I can say with 100% certainty that I have never, ever, ever forgotten to discard my hand and draw 3 cards, which is the best part of the card. I've never forgotten that, ever.
Or you could pull an LSV, and, like, I don't know what he did it with, but the one now where you can explore and then play another land or whatever, just forget to play your second land for the turn. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Well, there went that mana ramp. Just gone.
Of course.
Yeah,
Turn.
it's not a tournament if I haven't forgotten at least 4 or 5 triggers, so I know what you're talking about.
So, something interesting that I want to point out here for Dominaria, and this kind of affects Modern a little bit too here, is we're getting Siege Gang Commander, and we're getting Goblin Warchief.
Yes.
Like, did we just open up goblins as a form as a thing in Modern? Like, is that just gonna happen now?
You don't play 8 whack?
Well, when I say that, I mean, like, it's like actual legit just goblins. Like, I know 8 whack exists and goblins, and 8 whack is mostly a goblin deck, but I mean, like, I feel like having Goblin Warchief and Siege Gang Commander is going to be really interesting for the goblin deck. Like, you might not have to just play 8 whack. Like, you have another way to play goblins if you want to. I just think it's interesting because they haven't been in Modern before. That's all I'm saying.
I'm happy to see another tribe in Standard, so...
Until this set, till Ixalan, I've never been a tribal tending person, but now I really get it, and I like that. And so every time there's something that gets support, I'm happy for those players because I get it now.
And I think it's really interesting that they gave us back Llanowar Elves, because it's just, that's the original mana dork, and I remember a while back they said that Wizards said that they weren't really intending to ever give us 1 mana dorks anymore, and then, hey, here's Llanowar Elves. And when I saw that, I was kind of thinking to myself, I was like, are we going to get just Lightning Bolt and just Counterspell? And when they showed us these Wizards cards, which I can't remember the names for each of them off the top of my head, I'm gonna try and find them. But the one that's 2 and a red deal 3 damage to target creature, player, or planeswalker. This costs 2 less. If you have a wizard, it's basically like if you own wizards, this is Lightning Bolt, and then the other one's the same for Counterspell. Wizard's Retort is the counter one. It's 1 blue. This spell costs 1 less to cast if you control a wizard, counter target spell. Are there going to be enough wizards in Standard for these cards to really matter? And then what does this do for Modern? Like, does Modern just get Counterspell now? Are there enough wizards for that to matter?
You're talking about Wizard's Lightning?
The Wizard's Lightning and Wizard's Retort. Wizard's Lightning is the Lightning Bolt one, and Wizard's Retort is the counter spell one.
Well, I mean, there's the Merfolk Wizard.
Yes, that's true. I will say, as a Merfolk player, Curse Catcher. By the way, fun fact: Curse Catcher is a Merfolk wizard. There's like 3 or 4 different wizards in the Merfolk deck. Merfolk's getting a counterspell. A friend of mine discovered this. He told it to me. I'm not saying I'm the first person to discover this, but going Curse Catcher turn 1, turn 2, you hold up blue. You can just counter target spell. I think that's going to be really stupid. But I think in Standard, are these cards going to be are there going to be enough wizards for these cards to really matter in Standard, or is they just going to just kind of be meh?
I think that it's interesting enough that if it's doable, someone will solve it pretty quickly. It may not be us, but someone is already working on this.
Oh, obviously. So do you guys have any last thoughts on Standard or Dominaria before we move on? Mike, you got anything?
Well, I keep cutting in and out, so right now I don't have anything else. Maybe next week.
Sounds good. Missy, you got any final thoughts?
Nope, just glad to see it a healthy format again.
Yeah, and despite the fact that mono red is everywhere, I would say the Standard format is a little more healthy because there are definitely a much higher plethora of decks being played. It's not just energy everywhere. So one thing that I did want to talk about, you guys can jump in whenever you feel comfortable, but I did want to touch on Legacy just a little bit, just because that is something that I want to include in this podcast every now and again. I mean, for those of you that are interested in Legacy and play Legacy, it's still Legacy. Grixis Delver is still just one of the best decks in the format. You know, that's just gonna be how it is for a while. It's just so powerful with all the 1-drops you have, and despite the fact that Grixis Delver is everywhere, Legacy still has a pretty fleshed out metagame. There's all kinds of prison decks and your check pile control decks and your death and taxes and your turbo depths and all this other kind of stuff. And it's just, Legacy is an interesting format. I think that it's going to kind of be where it's at for a while. I think it'll be really interesting to see where Legacy goes once the team constructed Pro Tour happens in August. And that'll once you get Legacy decks in the hands of pros, I think that's when we're going to start seeing more big changes to Legacy. That's just where I'm at. So, did you guys play any Commander in the last week or two?
I did not.
I have not, but I do have a quick legacy question.
Oh, all right.
So if a girl stumbled into a really good deal on a playset of Badlands, what deck might those work their way into at some point?
All right. Let me refresh my memory on what colors Badlands produces. Just give me a second, because I'm bad.
Red, black.
So for red black, I mean the quick answer is Grixis Delver. Obviously, you'd need Underground Seas to go with it, but you're really only going to run into Grixis Delver. There's some. It looks like there's some of the Eldrazi Stompy decks could run it. Doesn't look like they are running it, but they could because they run Leylines in the sideboard and Simian Spirit Guides, but you're not really ever casting that. Let me look through here real quick. Yeah, it's mostly just going to be your Grixis decks. That's really all I can say on that, because that's the only one that really run red-black, to any real consistency.
Check those out.
if you which by the way, for all of my meta discussions and sayings and stuff, I'm not coming up with these off the top of my head. I'm actually using the MTG Goldfish metagame site. You can find them at mtggoldfish.com. I'm gonna give them credits that they don't sue me. But yeah, in my opinion, for dual lands, if it's not Underground Sea or Tropical Island or Tundra or any dual land that has blue in it, you're probably better off just putting it in an EDH deck.
Cool.
Do either of you...
Super amazing deal on them. I should maybe just consider trading them for more relevant legacy cards.
No, that's fair. Like, how amazing of a deal are we talking here?
They came in a collection that I got for $125.
And there's a playset of them in there?
Yes, sir.
That's a one. Those are $150 each.
Yes, they are.
You
and I thought at first that they were fakes. And then I'm the person people bring cards to figure out they're fake, because I love that whole process. And I was like, but wait, it doesn't matter, because everything didn't know that they were in there. And the guy didn't leave his number or anything. He came into the store, and the store didn't want to buy them. And I said, well, I'll look at it. What do you want for it? And he had some good cards, and then they were just kind of buried in quote unquote bulk.
Nice. So, what set are they from? Do you know?
Look, I have them right here.
I assume they're white border.
Yeah, they're revised.
Oh, okay. I mean, yeah, that's still $150 right there. That's $600 in cards. So yeah, you definitely did good on that one. I'd say if you wanted to get into Legacy, I'd say just drop those for oh, that's not the right number. You could probably drop those for an Underground Sea, which is $460. But
and then just wait for another hapless soul who has no idea what's in their 5 row of quote unquote bulk to walk in and gift me.
Yeah,
right.
But I would say though that in terms of getting into Legacy, your best bet is just selling those and getting actual cards, because those aren't going to do too well for you. I never really see those outside of EDH. EDH or Commander, whichever you prefer. But do either of you guys play EDH or Commander? Do you have any decks?
I play Breya.
I play, but I don't really build my own decks. I just prefer to use the precons and see how they do.
That's perfect. That's why the precons exist. And it's interesting. My favorite deck right now is a Scion of the Ur-Dragon deck that used to be the Dragon's pre-constructed deck. And basically what I did was I just put Scion of the Ur-Dragon in the Commander slot, and I put a really fun combo into it. The fun thing about Scion of the Ur-Dragon is a obviously dragon card that costs WUBRG, which is all 5 colors. It's white, blue, black, red, and green for a 4/4 flying legendary creature dragon avatar. And it has a really fun ability that says pay 2 mana, search your library for a dragon card and put it into your graveyard. If you do, Scion of the Ur-Dragon becomes a copy of that card until end of turn, then shuffle your library. So I could go and get the Ur-Dragon, which was the original header for the deck, and my Scion of the Ur-Dragon just becomes that. It's a 10/10, it has all its abilities and all that other kind of thing. It does lose that 2 mana activated ability, however, when that happens. But one of the cool things you can do is you can activate it, maintain priority because the stack is a beautiful thing, and then activate it again, so that way you can grab 2 things, and you can get, like, for this specific combo, what you do is you get Molten Steel Dragon, which is 4 and 2 Phyrexian mana for a 4/4 flyer with what amounts to Phyrexian fire breathing on it. Essentially, you pay red Phyrexian, which is either you pay red mana or you pay 2 life, and you can give it +1/+0 until end of turn. And so you do that 6 times, which makes you lose 12 life, obviously, but it turns your 4/4 into a 10/10. And then the next card that you get with that second activation is you get Skithiryx. So that then what you have is that +6/+0 stays on the card even when the Skithiryx comes on top of it. So you can't add any more once the Skithiryx is on it, but it's still a 10/4, and it still has the Infect from the Skithiryx. So with this combo, you can just get a 10 power Infect and just kill somebody.
Oops, you're dead.
Yeah, basically. Now, the fun thing about this that I found is I was playing it for a really long time, and I was thinking, oh man, what can I do to make this just kill the table? Because all that did was get me down to like 20 some odd life in Commander, because you start at 40 life, and kill one person. Cool. There's still 2 other people at the table usually, and then I'm just dead on my next turn. So I was thinking to myself, how can I make this kill everybody? I discovered a card called Chandra's Ignition, which I believe is from Origins. It's 3 red for a sorcery that says target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. So the way this works with Infect is I have a 10 power Infect creature. I make my 10 power Infect creature deal damage to everybody else at the table. Everybody else takes 10 damage in the form of Infect counters, and I just win. It's a combo that costs 9 mana, but it's so satisfying when you do it.
Can you still have players that want to play against you?
Yes, because like I said, it costs 9 mana, and it gets interrupted really, really, really easily. The other combo that you can do with Sign of the Air Dragon is actually involves Animate Dead and World Gorger Dragon, because with World Gorger it does stupid stuff with Animate Dead. I need to look up World Gorger really quickly, because I don't run this combo, but I've seen it done. So World Gorger Dragon is 3 red for a 7/7 Nightmare Dragon with flying and trample, and it says when World Gorger Dragon enters the battlefield, exile all other permanents you control. When it leaves the battlefield, return the exiled cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. So basically what you get to do is you have an Animate Dead on this, and you have the World Gorger Dragon, and when the World Gorger Dragon goes into the graveyard off of the Sign of the Air Dragon trigger, you can bring it back with the Animate Dead, and just kind of constantly flip it back and forth with the Animate Dead, because it's exiling the Animate Dead, bringing the Animate Dead back into the battlefield under your control, which brings the World Gorger Hydra back, and you just kind of flicker that a bunch, make a whole bunch of World Gorger Dragons, and then just swing for the win. And so a lot of times what you do for these combos is you'll run Force of Will or Pact of Negation or stupid stuff like that, but that's more for the competitive side of EDH. But yeah, I think that's my 2 cents on EDH. I don't know if you guys had anything you wanted to throw in.
The mentioning about the pre-con decks, I would say of all of the pre-constructed products that Wizards put out, the Commander decks, the Challenger decks will be okay, but the Commander decks have the most value for players, and they're just a good investment for the long term too, as a player. I was able to take my Breya deck out of the box and maybe switch around 10 cards and have a great competitive deck. So, I know a lot of people are like, oh, you're just playing something out of the box. But this is the one exception in Magic where if you buy the product, you can sit down and be somewhat competitive and just tweak it a little bit and just run over people. So.
Yeah, for me, Commander is all about playing my opponents. I'm not playing to win, but I like to see just how far I can push them to do the things that I want them to do. I like to be that puppet master at the table. So that's the joy that I get out of Commander. Whether or not I win, I don't care, and that's why I like to play these pre-constructed decks, because they are built well. They give me cards that I can use in Modern, and that's what I'm trying to build up, is more of my Modern collection right now. There are 100 cards. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to put anything together. I don't have to build the deck. I can just sleeve it up and play.
Yeah,
and so much.
Yep, go ahead.
So much of Commander is just politics, and that's what makes it fun. Like you said, is like just the interaction between the players, and it's a casual format, so nobody's like angle shooting or anything. Everybody's just there to do crazy combos and overpowered stuff they hope they draw into.
Exactly.
Yeah, when I first started playing Magic, Commander was actually the first format that I got into because that's what my friend who taught me to play was playing. It's the first format that I ever played. When I sat down to play Magic and learned to play it, it was with my friend's Commander deck, which is probably, let me say, to new players, the worst way to learn how to play Magic.
Yeah, that sounds terrifying.
Yeah, it was and make matters worse, I was playing in a Zusa deck, which is, I had no idea how to combo it properly. But
here's 100 cards. Figure it out. They all do something different.
Exactly.
Yeah, but they all do something different, but they all work together. Have fun. But I will say that I felt really good when I owned my first full Magic deck, which just so happened to be the Teferi Precon from 2014, I believe. And I think that those decks are forever going to be just a great way for players to get into Commander and therefore get into Magic, because it's always a good feeling when you own your first full unproxied deck. It doesn't matter how much you spent on it, if it's your own cards or whatever, but when it's a deck that you know is going to work, like the Precons do, I think that's why they're such a good product, and I really, really hope that the Challenger decks are the same way for Standard.
I was going to say, I think that's really the slot they're trying to fill there, is that in order to keep local game stores alive, you need a fresh customer base every now and then who want to buy the singles that everybody else already has, or that the people who are getting out of the game are, you need that economy. And I feel like the Challenger decks really help to accomplish that without hurting the rest of the economy for invested players, because they are only legal for 6 months.
And I hope that the ones that come out after this are released more towards the beginning of the Standard format than this late in the format. But releasing them this late in the format might just be the way to handle them, because otherwise it would just be like all you'd see is just people playing those decks, and it might just be like, hey, here's 4 Standard decks. These are going to be the 4 decks that you see. And so I think releasing them late might actually end up being a good thing to kind of control people from getting too overpowered with them, because yeah, you spend $30 on them, but then you only need to put an extra like 40 or 50 into cards to get the rest of the cards to make that deck tier 1 all of a sudden. So that's just my opinion on them.
Yeah, I think they're also a good way to keep the rising cost of Standard down, with them knowing that they're going to rotate out. They can put a lot more value in those decks than they could if these cards were going to be legal for over a year.
And frankly, if you're in the finance game, 6 months before things rotate out, you're out of the cards anyway. So anybody who's complaining on that front is just full of shit and doesn't know what they're talking about.
Right. So I think it's probably enough rambling on Commander and old topics. So any upcoming events that you guys are excited to see?
I'm really jealous of everyone who's going to GP Seattle.
I'm also jealous of that because I live in Pennsylvania and not in Seattle.
There's that.
But yeah, so the next one coming up I think is Kyoto. Is one of the next big ones coming up.
Team Trios.
Which, by the way, is an awesome format. I love Team Trios. You just get to your friends and play Magic. It's great.
That's the competitive format that I most want to play, but can't convince anybody else that it's not that big deal to lose a competitive Magic. Like, good players lose a competitive Magic all the time. So.
And you only need 2 of your players. You only need 2 people on your team of 3 to actually be good at the game. You could have a third person just come along for the ride as long as your other 2 people are really good at it.
Hey, Scrub, just fill this seat for us.
Yeah, basically. But
we'll
then
buy you lunch and pay for your hotel. Just go so we can play.
Yeah, so so Kyoto's going to be team constructed, which for those who don't know is one player. There's 3 players on a team, and one person plays Standard, one person plays Modern, and one person plays Legacy. And so basically with Kyoto and then GP Seattle, which is going to just have a Legacy main tournament, is going to be really, really fun to see the Legacy format unfold a little bit more now, because it's kind of been dead for the last couple of years, just because it's so expensive. But those are two events coming up that I'm really excited to see. Are either of you guys playing in any tournaments coming up?
I'll be playing in my local Friday Night Magic just like every week.
Same.
Yeah, I think until GP Dallas, I don't have any major competitive events. I might try to hit a PPTQ between now and then.
Awesome. So, did you guys have any, last minute topics you wanted to talk about? Anything random as we get out the door here?
I think I'm good.
Missy, you
I
got
think this
anything?
has been great.
Say that again.
This has been great.
Yeah, I think that this is a really good place to start. Next week we will hopefully have on a fourth co-host in the form of Aaron Bowers, who's another writer for MTG Deck Techs, and I should say that Mike Likes is also a writer for MTG Deck Techs.
That's right. Check out my articles every Friday on MTG Deck Techs. I write exclusively about Standard there.
Are you guys on Twitter?
So,
if people want to.
Yep. So I
opinions on the show.
I own a Twitter. I do not tweet often, but I do have a Twitter. If people want to follow me on there, my Twitter handle is at ScottyHS, and the Scotty has a 0 in it because I'm a scrub. But I don't tweet very often, but I might start if people follow me.
I guess you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Mike Likes MTG. That's MikeLikes MTG.
And I don't have a name that easily makes itself into a magic pun, so I'm MTGSNL, like Saturday Night Live. And you can also find me streaming on MTG Deck Techs. Mondays and Wednesday evenings, I'll be on Magic Online, and then throughout the week, randomly during the days, I will be streaming the heck out of some Arena because it's just fun. And I also am on another podcast called Direct Damage Cast. It's just community commentary, and you're welcome to follow me there too.
Yep, and I feel like I should also shout out, give a little bit of a shout out to I admin a Facebook page for the MTG Pro Tutor podcast, which if you guys haven't heard of it, it's run by a guy named Sean Penrod. He interviews pro players that top 8 GPs, top 16 Pro Tours, and just kind of helps new players get access to some of the good players. Their Facebook group is something that we use a little bit to help promote MTG Deck Techs. We post stuff in there, and so if you guys are listening to this podcast, they're definitely another good podcast to check out.
Sean's podcast is amazing, and I'm always really impressed with the tone of his content and how positive and committed to helping players develop he has been. So I second that.
It would not surprise me if at some point in the future Sean might show up as a guest on this podcast.
That would be so exciting. I'm such a fangirl. You just need to know that about me.
You got anything, any last minute stuff, Mike?
Hey, Missy, with you streaming Arena coming up, what do you think of the upcoming edition of Amonkhet, an Hour of Devastation?
I knew it was coming because you could sort your cards and look at the unowned, and they were there. I just was waiting for them to make it a thing. So I'm excited. I think it will add a lot of diversity and get it closer to standard, especially as we approach rotation.
Yeah.
So what I'm most excited about is having standard available at rotation.
I agree. Do you think they're going to add Kaladesh before rotation happens?
I think they will.
I hope they will, because I really want to get full standard where I can play it online and not have to invest in MTGO.
I imagine that that's their goal.
But guys, the real question we should be asking here is it going to have limited any time in the next 5 years? Oh,
I think I can say yes, it will within the next 5 years.
I was just making an exaggeration because they were supposed to have it
Supposed to have it by now.
Yeah, I was about to say they're supposed to have it a month ago and still not there. So Wizards, what the hell? But okay, so I think that's a good place for us to wrap up. I really hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. We will include links to all the various websites and deck lists that we mentioned in the show notes below. If you guys liked it, try and be sure to leave a 5-star rating on iTunes. Leave us a like if you're seeing us on YouTube. And I hope you guys will come back next week, and we will definitely be a little bit better prepared. Keep in mind this was just the pilot episode, so things will improve. So hopefully you guys stick with us, and we're really excited to continue doing this and just kind of go on this journey of the meta of Magic the Gathering. So this has been the Meta Masters podcast, and I hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you next week.